In a small corner restaurant, the smell of freshly cooked food mingled with the chatter of conversations. Tables were full, waiters hurried about, but nothing drew more attention than the scene unfolding in the middle of the room. A bulky man, with a loud voice and a mocking smile, leaned over the table of a young man who only wanted to enjoy his meal in peace. The aggressor's laughter echoed, slicing through the air like blades, while his words dripped with contempt. The young man kept his eyes down, trying to ignore it, but every word felt like an invisible punch. Everyone was watching, some with pity, others with curiosity, but no one dared to intervene. And right here, I invite you to stay until the very end. You'll want to see every second of this story, so like this video and subscribe now so you won't miss a thing. The man stood tall, as if trying to dominate the entire place with his presence alone. His eyes were cold, calculating, and seemed to pierce straight through the young man's soul. There wasn't just contempt there. There was something deeper, as if this meeting was no coincidence. He leaned in even closer, resting his heavy hands on the table, his face inches from the young man's. An uncomfortable silence filled the restaurant, broken only by the faint clinking of cutlery. Some patrons averted their eyes, others stared, waiting for the next move. The young man took a deep breath, and in that moment it became clear, beneath his calm surface, something inside him was about to awaken. The silence was broken by the aggressor's voice, heavy with resentment. He spoke like someone carrying a grudge for decades, revealing that this meeting was only the continuation of an old story. 20 years ago, a dispute between their families had ended in humiliation for him, and now, in front of this young man, he saw a chance for revenge. This wasn't just about a ruined meal or public insults. It was about wounds that had never healed. The young man looked up for the first time, his eyes filled with both surprise and a dawning understanding of the gravity of what was happening. The past had suddenly come alive in the middle of that crowded room, ready to explode. The aggressor's words grew sharper, thrown like precise blows meant to shatter the young man's dignity. He called him weak, useless, and hinted that his family was nothing but a burden to the community. Each sentence drew malicious laughter from two companions watching closely, feeding the humiliation. The young man felt his face burn, not from the insults themselves, but from the way everyone around seemed to accept this scene as inevitable. There was something more painful than any physical blow, the feeling of powerlessness under the gaze of those who did nothing. His fists tightened under the table, trying to contain an impulse that, if unleashed, would change the course of that night. The aggressor shifted his tone, not to ease the tension, but to deepen it. With a cynical smile, he reminded everyone that, in the past, the young man or someone close to him had come in second place in an important competition. For him, it meant being a loser forever, as if carrying that position was an unshakable mark of failure. Some customers whispered, recognizing the story, while others simply watched, trying to understand the weight of this memory. The young man, now sitting straighter, locked eyes with the aggressor. Something in his gaze hinted that this second place was about to take on a whole new meaning, one no one saw coming. The man stepped back just enough to throw out his final taunt, an open challenge, right there in front of everyone. He wanted the young man to prove with his own hands that he wasn't the failure he claimed. The air grew heavier, as if it had thickened. Some laughed nervously, others muttered that it was madness. Accepting meant facing not just a physically stronger opponent, but the weight of public humiliation if he lost. The young man took a deep breath, slowly stood up, and in a firm voice said he would accept the challenge. Not out of pride, but because the time had come to put an end to years of scorn and injustice. Standing face to face with his aggressor, memories of his past began to flash before the young man's eyes. He remembered long nights of silent training, trying to overcome the limitations life had placed on him. He recalled an old injury that kept him sidelined for months, the times he was laughed at, and the people who doubted he could ever return. Every scar, visible or not, carried a story of pain, but also of resilience. At that moment he realized he wasn't just defending himself, he was proving to everyone, and to his own heart, that no label from the past could define his future. Whispers rippled through the restaurant. Everyone seemed to know about one specific weakness, An old injury in his left arm, never fully healed, was common knowledge among those who knew him. The aggressor smiled with malice, certain that exploiting this flaw would guarantee victory and humiliation. The young man noticed the pity and doubt in the crowd's eyes, but instead of fear, he felt a spark ignite within. He knew a fighter's true strength wasn't just in muscles, but in the mind and in the courage to face what everyone believed to be impossible. The aggressor advanced with confidence, deliberately aiming every strike at the young man's injured arm. Each blow was designed to inflict pain and weaken his ability to fight back. The audience held their breath with each hit. Some even turned away, unable to watch the slow, deliberate destruction. But as he endured the pain, the young man noticed something. His opponent was so fixated on that weakness he saw nothing else, and that obsession might be the opening he needed to turn the fight around. Convinced that victory was only moments away, the aggressor lowered his guard, showing off with theatrical gestures and taunts. He smiled at the crowd as if performing for them, certain that the ending would be humiliating for the young man. But arrogance has a price. Every second of distraction was an opportunity for the young man to watch, calculate, and prepare the counter-strike. Despite the pain in his arm, his focus was unshakable, waiting for the exact moment when blind confidence would become the aggressor's greatest mistake. The restaurant fell so silent you could hear their heavy breathing. All eyes were locked on the two men, as if the outside world had ceased to exist. The aggressor struck with speed and power, trying to end the fight quickly. The young man, however, dodged with precision, becoming more comfortable with his rhythm. The fight was no longer just physical. It was a battle of emotional control, patience against impulsiveness. And slowly, the crowd began to realize the outcome might not be what they expected. This is when the tension peaked. And I need you to like and share this video so more people can hear stories like this. In a decisive moment, the aggressor lunged with all his strength, aiming once again for the injured arm. But the young man, anticipating the move, pivoted and used his opponent's own momentum against him. One swift, precise strike hit the exact point needed to throw him off balance. The sharp sound of impact echoed through the room, followed by complete silence. The man staggered, unable to understand how the fight had suddenly shifted. All eyes turned to the young man, standing tall, steady, and breathing calmly, as if this moment had been prepared for all his life. Still dazed, the aggressor looked at the young man as if truly seeing him for the first time. Then the truth came out. That second place from years ago wasn't a sign of defeat, but of sacrifice. The young man had given up the victory to protect someone he loved, hiding the truth to avoid exposing the person involved. The room filled with whispers of astonishment. This revelation changed everything. It wasn't just a physical fight, but the story of a man who had silently carried out an act of courage few could match. With the truth revealed, the weight of humiliation began to lift. The young man took a deep breath, stepped forward, and firmly helped the aggressor to his feet. There was no hatred in his eyes anymore, only the certainty that his honor had been restored before everyone present. The crowd, once divided between pity and disbelief, now stood to applaud him. This was not just the moment he won a fight. It was when the entire narrative of his life had changed. He was no longer second place. He was the man who faced injustice and walked away with his head held high. The young man walked out into the street, the late afternoon light casting a golden glow on his face. Each step felt lighter, freer, as if a burden had finally been lifted. Victory wasn't about defeating someone. It was about reclaiming dignity, rewriting the past, and proving that the truest wins happen inside the heart. And now, before we close, I'll ask you, have you already liked, shared, and subscribed? Because more stories like this are on their way and you won't want to miss them.